This is immigration attorney Parviz Malakudi. I'm in beautiful Green Lane right now. And I thought I'd record this video on one of the most common reasons that people get denied naturalization, and that's for continuous residence, for having broken continuous residence. So, as many of you know, in order to be eligible for naturalization, you have to show that you've been continuously resident in the United States during the previous 5 years or 3 years if you're applying for naturalization and you've been married to a US citizen for that time. So, what does continuous residence mean? Well, it's a combination of factors that have to do with A, the period of time you've actually spent in the country, and then B, the ties that you keep to the country, to the United States, when you're actually traveling. Okay, so it's a little bit of a multi-factor analysis, I would say. One common issue that comes up is that there are people that travel outside, green card holders that travel outside the United States for between 6 months to a year. Okay, and they don't keep enough ties, at least ties that they can prove to the United States during the time that they're outside of the country. And then those people, when they end up applying for naturalization, they run into this continuous residence issue. I've had a number of cases like this, and the way you prove that you have kept continuous residence in the United States while you were outside is A, showing that you kept paying taxes in the United States. Uncle Sam always wants his money. B, you kept your employment in the United States and did not take employment outside of the United States. And then C, that you maintain access to your home, to your abode in the United States. Those are three big ways of proving it. Those are not the only reasons. There are other ways to prove it as well. But I noticed a common scenario that comes up, okay, which is elderly people that are applying for naturalization, and they spend a lot of time going back and forth between the United States and between the United States and their other country, their previous country. And the reason that elderly people I'm seeing have a little bit more difficulty with proving continuous residence if they've spent more than 6 months outside the United States is because they're retired, they don't work. Sometimes they never work. I just had a client that was a housewife. She never worked. So she's not going to be able to prove that she maintained continuous residence in the United States because she kept her employment here. She's not employed, was never employed. The other thing is with a lot of elderly people, they live with their children, their adult children, and so they don't have a house with a mortgage with their name on it or an apartment lease with their name on it. It's their children that have those things, and then the elderly applicant, the naturalization applicants, have have a room in the house. So that becomes difficult to prove. Okay, so it's difficult for them to prove that they maintain employment here, didn't get employed abroad, and they maintain access to their abode here. What I've done in these types of cases that have come to me is go to the next level, the next layer of evidence to try to prove continuous residence. So these are things such as if you've had a vehicle, keeping your vehicle here, keeping the registration during the time that you were abroad, keeping insurance on your vehicle during the time that you were abroad, keeping your bank accounts here during the time that you were abroad, keeping your ties to the community. So I've even had a case where where the applicant was involved in kind of community activities, and so we showed that she was still paying dues on those community activities during the time that she was abroad, and the money, the annual fee came due while she was abroad. She still paid it, right? So these little things, there's a number of other things as well, combined can be used to show that to argue that a person has kept continuous residence in the United States, even if they've been outside of the United States for 6 months to a year, right? So each case, of course, is different. You have to work with what that person has. I've also gotten affidavits on behalf of family members to show that they just wanted to go on a lengthy trip abroad and they came back. So I've had good success with giving affidavits on behalf of the applicants, and then also showing the applicant's ties to the United States as far as family is concerned. I had an elderly applicant who had only two grandchildren. Both grandchildren lived here in the United States in California. So we got affidavits to that effect, and from the parents of those grandchildren saying, my mother, the applicant, loves my children. She cannot imagine living without them. So she always intended to come back to the United States. Things like this. And then, of course, gathering up all this evidence and then a short argument from me, the attorney, basically pulling all the evidence together, okay, highlighting it, and then of course, you know, including the applicable law as well, the applicable regulations. So that's a common issue, okay? It's the elderly applicants. They're not the only ones that deal with issues having to prove continuous residence, but that's a common one. The elderly don't have work history, don't have maybe a house or a home to their name. But these cases can be dealt with. They can be successfully naturalized. Now, a lot of people have come to me and come to my office asking for representation after they've already started the naturalization process, and then possibly after either they got a request for evidence while the application was pending, or sometimes even after the interview they get an N14, okay, which is kind of a form of a request for evidence. And then we're scrambling against the clock to gather up this documentation, some of which people didn't even know exists, some of which hasn't been touched for years. But these people can take actions. When I say these people, I mean applicants that might be dealing with a continuous residence issue, or maybe adult children of applicants that are helping them. They can prepare for these things ahead of time, right? And the way to do it is to make sure you gather up all the evidence of the continued ties to the United States if the applicant is going to be taking a lengthy trip from the United States. So anywhere, I would say even from 4 months on, if the applicant is going to be taking a trip of at least 4 months, okay, definitely anything that's going to be over 6 months, okay, you want to make sure you gather documentation. You want to keep paying the car insurance here, health insurance, keep the bank accounts, keep the car registered. Do all these little things to show that the United States is still your home. And even if you're taking a trip of 6, 7, or 8 months, you intend to come back to this place. This is where you're resident. So that's it. I just wanted to record this video to talk about this type of common scenario that I'm seeing coming up. If you're dealing with a situation like this and you want to discuss the facts one-on-one about your specific situation, click on the link below, book a paid consultation. And equally, if you don't want to have to think about the ins and outs of this, if you just want to hire a professional attorney to deal with this, click on that same link, book a consultation. We'll get into the facts as well as the timeline, the cost, and everything else we can do to give the best chance of having a successful application.